I'm deeply curious to hear what you have in mind, as the president just now in the White House driveway says that he is not happy with the way Iran is negotiating, going further to say that he does not believe that they are well-intended at the negotiating table. Does this give you pause? Do you expect strikes this weekend?
Look, I have no idea whether there'll be strikes or when they might be. The real question is, what is it the United States is asking of Iran? What are we asking when it comes to their nuclear activities? Are we prepared to be serious about asking them to rein in their ballistic missile program, their support for proxies? You don't hear people talking much about protecting the internal opposition. So we just have to decide how ambitious we're going to be. Obviously, the more ambitious we decide to be in what we ask, the less likely we're going to get an agreement. That means we've got to use military force, presumably. Well, then you've got to ask yourself, what is military force likely to accomplish? What are the risks of using military force given how Iran could retaliate? So the fact that we're happy or unhappy with the Iranians, the first question is, what is it we are asking for, and how essentially, how serious are we about demanding it?
Well, as we often have seen with the administration, there's been an evolving sort of justification that began with protection of protesters. Remember, that was weeks ago. Donald Trump said on social media, help is on its way. And he actually took credit for Iran, for Tehran backing off threats to hang protesters. At the State of the Union, though, Richard Haass, he talked about more than 30,000 protesters being killed. I don't know if they think that we've abandoned them or what they think of the prospect of strikes, but now it seems to be about not acquiring a nuclear weapon. And then we add another log on the fire with ballistic missiles. Is this too much? As the president says, Tehran is not negotiating good faith. Is it too much for their negotiators to follow?
Well, again, if we ask Iran to give up every aspect of a nuclear program, their ballistic missiles and the rest, they're going to tell us to take a hike. And they believe that they can put pressure on us. In some ways, they may be bad. They may think they are better positioned to take a punch over time than we can deliver one. There's things they could do to raise the price of oil. Given how important affordability is in this country politically, they may be calculating that's not something this president really wants. So we're still at the stage, I think, yes, we're negotiating, but some of this is also pre-negotiating. It's bluffing. And I think, again, using a boxing analogy again, I think the two sides are still feeling each other out.
Okay, little rope-a-dope maybe, but I do wonder, with the prospect of talks being scheduled for next week, if that matters, based on the behavior you've seen by this administration.
Well, in the past, the United States, last spring, we used force even though talks were scheduled. So what could drive things forward is if the United States thinks that talks are hopeless, or that they see activities, as you suggested, possibly taking place where the Iranians are trying to move or hide some important technology. But at the moment, my guess is the president's still improvising. I don't think he's decided what the United States is going to ask for, much less what it's going to do if it doesn't get it.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get to. Richard Haass believes Donald Trump is improvising, which could be dangerous in its own right, but I guess this is the way he operates, right? We talked to Bob McNally, Richard, at Rapidan Energy, who's got a real sense of the potential fallout here when it comes to what Iran might do, whether it's a bloody nose strike or a much longer campaign. Here's what he said.
If Iran chose to make the Hormuz Strait unsafe, it could do so for weeks. It's sort of like back in April when the Houthis absorbed 52 days of pummeling by the U.S. military, and we did not stop them from making Bab el-Mandab unsafe. Iran has much better weaponry, better coastline than the Houthis. So I can almost see spikes and reversals here. And if it gets to a prolonged Hormuz disruption, well over $100 a barrel.
And of course, Iran knows this, Richard. How far do you think Iran would go to retaliate?
Look, Iran will go pretty far if it needs to in order to, one, preserve the regime, and two, again, they may calculate that an extended conflict where the price of oil goes up, that they're better positioned than we are to hang in there. Look, part of the administration problem is they've amassed all this force, but they haven't really thought it through. I call it an armada in search of a strategy. I really don't think we've thought through where we're going to go with this and not just what's a desirable outcome. We also have to think about what's an achievable outcome. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about that.
Wow. You are, of course, someone who is steeped in many years of diplomacy, and I wonder your thoughts about the two gentlemen at the table, specifically Jared Kushner. It's been suggested that his relationship as the son-in-law to the President of the United States actually brings leverage and credibility. Is that true?
Yeah, I tend not to talk about people. I focus on policy. No one doubts that both he and Steve Witkoff have extraordinarily close relations with this president, which makes them both credible. But what matters more than their credibility is what policies are they authorized to advance. And I would keep the focus on that more than personal relationships or anything else.
Interesting. There have been questions about whether the administration is not only tapping the right people, but is not using enough of its expertise and institutional knowledge in this case. And I guess I would ask you, I know you don't want to talk about individuals in their case, but we have a Secretary of State who's going to be on his way to Israel in the coming days. How important will that visit be?
Well, again, I think the Israelis got the message when the prime minister visited the president here a few weeks ago to hang back. The United States wants, I think, a deal if it can get one without a military exchange. So I think the question is making the Israelis comfortable, providing certain types of equipment, air defense against Iran's ballistic missiles. Maybe we'll reach some understandings about what Israel would do or could do with our support if Iran widened the war and attacked it. But I don't think that's important. What's though more important, again, is what is the United States going to demand, whether Iran will agree. And if the more ambitious we are, they're not going to agree. And then what we're prepared to do and what Iran's prepared to do in retaliation. So Israel's important, but I wouldn't say right now it is central.
Got it. When we consider off-ramps, Richard, and based on what we've seen the administration do in Ukraine, in Venezuela, even Greenland, Iran knows who it's dealing with, and I wonder if an economic arrangement is how this ends, maybe in exchange for a lifting of sanctions when it comes to critical minerals, when it comes to energy. Is that something that would tempt this president?
I hope not in this case, because, again, I think the president's right when he talks about a ceiling on Iran nuclear capabilities. The Israelis are concerned about ballistic missiles. I don't want to see happen here what happened in Venezuela, where essentially we cut a deal and ignored the population. I don't want to see the Iranian people somehow cast aside simply because the United States wants some sort of arrangement in the oil sector. So I would hope that kind of a deal is not on anybody's mind.
Interesting. What are you watching this weekend? What should our listeners and viewers keep in mind as we go through Saturday and Sunday?
I think to watch more than anything is whether there are activities on the Iranian side that would suggest somehow that time is of the essence, what each side says about the negotiations. But again, this is a crisis. Let's be clear. It's hard to answer your question because this crisis came about without a rationale. It wasn't as though Iran triggered it by its nuclear program or ballistic missiles or proxies. Yes, it did terrible things to its own people. We threatened them, then we did nothing. So 2 months later, we are where we are. So it's hard to know what to look for next because nothing, essentially, you'd be hard-pressed to explain how it is we got to this point.
When you see Saudi Arabia and Iran both accelerating exports of crude, what does that tell you about the status of talks?
What that tells you is they want to keep some cushion, some stability in the oil market. As you've seen, oil prices have gone up, plus or minus 10% over the last couple of weeks. So the Saudis tend to be, want to stabilize things. And it's a way of also signaling the Iranians that their ability to inflict pain on the world through oil pricing is not as great as they think it is.
Well, I'll tell you, oil prices are on the move here. Brent up 2.5%. WTI is as well. We're back to $67 a barrel almost in Texas, Richard. So investors are certainly paying attention to this.